Well, greetings, everybody. Oh my goodness, I have. I'm really sorry that I've been so out of the loop. Um, the last 2 weeks have probably been the most challenging physically that I've had, maybe ever. I don't know if it's just a sign of. Well, my birthday is this week. I'm about to turn 67, and maybe my body's reminding me of that fact. That my goodness. It wasn't ever COVID, but if somebody had told me it was COVID, I would have believed them. I've had chills and fever and the big D, um, big. My goodness, what else? Then it kind of moved into my chest. If it was the same virus, I don't know. And I've still got some coughing and congestion going on. Hey, look, I'm going to tell you these things. What can I say? What else? I'm getting over, recovering from a knee surgery that may or may not have contributed to, well, I don't think it had anything to do with any of this really. But then this virus seemed to have clicked on something I haven't had in quite a while. Some of you may have heard of cluster headaches before. When I was younger, I was a victim of these very nasty migraines called clusters because that's how they come. And I felt like I'd pretty much aged out of them until last week. And I only had one real pretty rough one. Even that wasn't as bad as it used to be. But it was bad enough, and it lasted over 12 hours and just put me out of commission. And oh, it's been miserable. We've been calling this Job's household here for the last couple of weeks because my wife Janice got pneumonia and actually spent 2 nights in the hospital a couple days after I came home from my surgery. So, oh my goodness. Well, so I'm a bit behind the 8 ball on a lot of stuff. I'll certainly I'm feeling a lot better now. And I'll start getting more on ball with the grading. Now, I want to talk about this week's reading just a little bit. I'm really delighted that if you haven't started yet, that soon you will begin Shelley Rambo's book, Resurrecting Wounds. Dr. Shelley Rambo, of course, will be our big theologian guest during our week on campus in August, and she's really delightful and sharp, and I'm excited for us to be able to host her. Just by way of introduction, in this first chapter, she spends a lot of time with John Calvin and Calvin's commentary on the Gospel of John, specifically dealing with Jesus' resurrection appearance in John chapter 20. A lot of what she says could probably be transposed pretty readily to that Emmaus Road story that we've already talked about a little bit, although in that case it really doesn't feature Jesus' wounds. And that's the big deal in John 20, of course, with the wounds of Jesus that are still visible, tangible, and in other words, are part of the resurrection body. And it's just really fascinating the extent to which Calvin went to try to minimize this woundedness, and even essentially to deny that the wounds of the crucifixion would remain upon or with the resurrected body of Jesus. And I think that Rambo does a really good job of interrogating Calvin on this. Now, if you haven't started reading, you'll notice that she engages quite a bit early on in the chapter with a series that was done, I think, in French. Les Revenants, I think, was the name of the title of it. And in fact, I read her book when it first came out, and it inspired me to hunt down this series, which was quite fascinating, actually. Although I felt I was disappointed in the ending. But boy, I don't know, it's maybe 8 to 10 episodes. It's sort of a one season thing. Some really amazing storytelling. I actually think it's been done in English if you'd rather not read subtitles. I started the English one at one point, and I don't know what it's called unless it's called the Remainers. And that doesn't sound right. But I didn't get too far with the English version. But so, if you're not interested in that series, you might have to sort of skim through a bit. Although I think she's doing a really good job of weaving together the themes that she's seen in this show with John 20 and with issues about body and trauma and how our bodies, all these trauma theorists, what I think would indicate, our body keeps the score, as it were. Our body maintains the record of injuries, traumatic events that, scar us. And of course, this is the significance of Jesus with these wounds of the crucifixion and the fact that they're still there, and the fact that John Calvin didn't like that very much. In fact, it's made me think, one thing I haven't done is to see what Wesley does in his New Testament notes on John 20. Now, unfortunately, a lot of Wesley's New Testament notes were adapted from an earlier commentator. Wesley was highly adept at what we now would think of as plagiarism. I think back then they had a little bit looser expectations about that sort of thing. I'm sure he's got his own comments in there along the way. But I haven't read what he has on John 20. What I do have, of course, along with that first introduction in chapter 1 of Rambo's fine book, is a little essay that I did for a meeting of the Wesleyan Philosophical Society a few years ago. It's a short paper. The meeting was about, or the sessions were devoted to the body and like the significance of the body philosophically, theologically. I think it was called "This Is My Body" as a conference title. And my argument, pretty straightforwardly, is in many ways parallels what Rambo finds in Calvin, that Wesley, regardless of what he thinks about the wounds of the resurrected body, it's hard to find Wesley really taking very seriously the truly traumatic nature of Jesus' experience of violence and humiliation in the crucifixion. Largely because I think John Wesley actually had a hard time really dealing with Jesus' human nature. I've actually made this critique in several different essays over the years, and gotten a little pushback from some people, but I think in the main there's an agreement that Wesley tended to shy away from a deep sort of acknowledgement of Jesus' own human nature, and therefore his human challenges, temptations, struggles, and pains. So your reading is basically what's assigned, of course, in Shelley Rambo, my little essay, and then 2 sermons of Wesley's. And I'll just say very quickly about those. One of them is "What is Man?" I think I may having us read both of Wesley's sermons, "What is Man?" eventually. I believe this is the first one he preached or wrote. And that's basically to accompany my essay. The other one, entitled "The Image of God," some really interesting ideas there. I don't know if I would have chosen this as one of the sermons to read were it not Shelley Rambo's suggestion. We met over breakfast months ago to talk a little bit about her involvement in this class. And, this sermon, and Tim Crutcher actually mentions this briefly in your reading this week, or this past week, where Wesley, it's in this sermon that Wesley speculates a little bit about the physical, the physical, what's the word I want here, results, ramifications of Adam's sin. He kind of talks about what, Wesley speculates about what it did to his body. And I've always thought this was a little goofy. He kind of goes into these weird speculations. And Crutcher even says that later he kind of departed from that, but maybe near the end of his life kind of returned to these thoughts. Rambo suggested it precisely because of this idea that the body keeps score. The body records, feels deeply, and internalizes the pains, sorrows, traumatic events in our personal and corporate lives. And so in this regard, she just wants to say, look how Wesley thought, at least for a time, about how the body itself can be implicated in sin and in the problem of sin. And certainly we wouldn't want to say that the body's not implicated. I'm just not sure that generally we would have gone with Wesley quite the way he does. But read the sermon, and you might find yourself wondering what all my fuss was about. Well, that's probably enough of an intro for now. I'm really thankful that I'm feeling better. I actually was able to preach this morning. I was supposed to start a 10-week series 2 weeks ago, and it's turned into an 8-week series that started today. But I had a lot of fun with it, and hopefully we'll continue. Well, blessings to you, and I hope that you'll find my introductory remarks here of some help. Blessings.